Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is Louis Shulman. He's the co-host of the Louis and Kyle Show, and he has a myriad of business interests, I'm sure, including Orbit Metrics, InboxGhost.com, and who knows what else. But Louis, welcome to the podcast.
Dude, thank you for having me. I didn't realize you were doing this since 2014. That's awesome.
Yeah, so there's been a blog since 2014, podcast around 2 years, I think over 2 years now. 140 published episodes at the time of this recording. It'll be over 150 by the time this one comes out, because we try to keep a little bit of a buffer. I'm sure we'll get into some podcast strategies. You're more than me though. You've done 180 plus podcasts.
That's right. But that's over a 4-year period. So your cadence seems elevated relative to mine. So you're getting after it.
Yeah, we do 2 episodes a week. We were doing roughly 1 a week for, I think, the first year and a half. And then I talked to some other podcasting buddies. Shout out to Curtis Duggan from the Remotely Serious podcast and Chase Warrington from the About Abroad podcast. And I said, how do I kind of grow this thing? And they said, well, why don't you just do double the episodes? Why don't you do 2 a week? And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll do 2 a week. I have enough of a backlog. So I've been doing that for like a year, I guess.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So I guess today's episode is, it's a little bit of a cross collaboration. Louis has his own thing, the Louis and Kyle Show. It's a very business and entrepreneurship focused podcast and YouTube channel. They got 250 plus videos, 13K YouTube subscribers over there. Definitely a bunch of big names have been on your podcast as well, and we'll talk a bit about that. But I thought kind of the general idea today would maybe be to talk about making money online and entrepreneurship and kind of cracking that part of things. When I reached out to you to maybe do an episode, you said, well, I'm not really the Latin America guy. And I said, you know what, that's fine. I think what we want to do with this one is talk about how to make money online, because people have to be able to crack that part of the code in order to live abroad.
Yeah. And I want to say for whoever's listening, what I meant by that is not that I don't like Latin America. It's that I would not consider myself particularly knowledgeable about it. I wouldn't be dropping the sauce or giving people alpha, things they don't know, things that you don't know. But as far as like the desire to learn more about it and the enthusiasm to spend more of my life there, definitely going to have to check out some episodes that you've done with people who would be fitting that mold. But I'm excited to talk about online business today.
Yeah. So what do you do? It looks like you have a lot of plates spinning.
I have a lot of spinning plates. I also have other people spinning the plates with me. I'm just the only one who's really active on social media. So I think I get a lot of overdue credit for kind of looking like I do it all. And I represent all the businesses and I do sales and marketing for all of the businesses. But in terms of overseeing ops and making sure the plates are actually spinning and not crashing, I do have quite a bit of help with some talented partners that do a lot of that work. The 2 projects that I am most invested in from a business perspective, the podcast is less so a business endeavor and more so a learning and fun and intrinsically rewarding project that in many ways does reward the businesses, but that's not why I do it. And I find that it's difficult to expect to get everything out of everything, if that makes sense. So if the podcast was something I needed to make money from and had to put in a certain outcome, then it would not be I treat it more like art, right? I'm less attached to the outcome. It's more about, am I enjoying the process? Where the businesses, they solely exist for the sake of this is a thing designed to provide value to a group of people such that the people running this business, which is myself and my team, are able to make money. And obviously providing value is the essential part of that being a successful equation. But the 2 businesses, Orbit Metrics is a data and analytics consulting firm. I actually didn't start that. It was already fairly established when I got started, established in the sense of could afford to bring me on full-time on a salary, but the other co-founder was still working a full-time job at the time. It's not like established, but off the ground with a bit of runway. That business specifically builds reports and dashboards for people, usually inside of Looker Studio. It used to be called Data Studio, but now it's called Looker Studio. And we help businesses automate all of their internal reporting. So imagine you're spending 100 grand a month on advertising across 6 different platforms, and you're tweeting and you're putting out content on this other platform, and you have email marketing, and there's a lot to keep track of. We build a dashboard that aggregates all those metrics into the KPIs you want to track on a per platform basis. So you're making more informed decisions and, again, saving time by automating all of that. And then a newer business, I say newer, we started it in September of 2023. We're recording this in almost February, January 30th of 2024. So it's about 5, maybe 6 months old. And we are doing ghostwriting for newsletters. So that's inbox ghosts. Very
Hmm.
straightforward premise. Every business could benefit from a weekly newsletter. Obviously, what a newsletter means could be different for every business. But if you have a business and you have prospects, you might as well keep them engaged and remind them that you exist on a regular interval. And we like to think you should do that more often than just when you have something to sell. Not just sending people an email every single week saying, hey, do you remember us? Buy our stuff, but actually like offering something useful and creating a valuable piece of content that your prospects and target readers would benefit from and would like enjoy reading and continue reading, whether they have no intention to ever buy from you, whether they've already bought from you and have no reason to buy from you again. Just a way to build authority. So those are the two businesses. And like I said,
The
my primary
metrics in
role,
the email.
exactly. And it's with the same team though of 2 co-founders, myself being the third. So 2 additional co-founders.
Okay. And it's the same co-founders for both businesses?
Yes. So we have one
Okay.
daily stand up
So
where we
you got a
discuss both
trio. You got a
businesses
trio
every day.
dream team.
We've got a trio dream team. That is for sure.
Okay.
I can
Awesome.
just say that about the other ones, I suppose. It's not very humble to say that we're the dream team, but they're the dream team and I'm on it with them.
Okay. And so obviously this, it's distributed. You're not working at the same office every day. So even though you're recording this in New York City at this point in time, you could be anywhere. You're not working a
Good.
normal job anymore. Maybe you started your career working in consulting or something like that and then kind of ditched the corporate life at some point. How did that work out for you?
Yeah, I started at remote startups. If we consider starting my career to be like my first real job after graduating, I did have
Yeah.
several in person jobs during college, like internships in an engineering co op that was properly traditional. That was for Mercedes Benz in Alabama at a factory. So properly in person. And it was
Okay.
cool. I wore steel toe boots. I got prescription safety glasses that I use when I go shooting now. So, like, great perk of the job was getting prescription safety glasses. Anyway, I've been remote since I graduated. So the first job I got out of school was working for Bitcoin Magazine in Nashville. They're pretty well known on Twitter. They run the Bitcoin Magazine Twitter account. They do the big Bitcoin conference every single year. It's been in Miami the past couple of years, but it'll be in Nashville next year, which is
Okay.
cool.
That really big Bitcoin one in Miami, that's them.
That's them.
Okay.
Mhm. And then they do also put out a print magazine that's like in mainstream distribution, like Barnes and Noble. And then their blog and newsletters and all that have a pretty sizable readership. And then following the job with them, which was remote, but I did live in Nashville. So I went to the office maybe 1 to 2 days a week. And I don't totally know how their policies have changed since then, if they're more in the office, less in the office, etc. But I went in a few days a week, but I did travel. So like the first week I got that job, I actually took it remote from New York City, even though I was living in Nashville. And that was just cool to like accept a job and be on a vacation the first week of the job. Was like a very cool experience. And then I left that job to work for Anthony Pompliano. He's also a big crypto Twitter account. People
Hmm.
just know him better as Pomp, and he's got a big podcast. And I worked with his job board and crypto training program that was hosted on Maven. And then I left that job when my co-founder at the agency was like, "Hey, do you want to build this business with me?" And I said, "Sure, let's do it," and haven't looked back.
I didn't realize you worked with Pomp. How long did you work for his organization?
I was there for 8 months, maybe 9.
That's cool. How did you get that opportunity?
So I was already working at Bitcoin Magazine at the time. So I was already a bit of an insider, if you will, in the industry. Like I was kind of vetted for understanding the culture and understanding the energy and the ethos of crypto. It's one thing to
Yeah.
like say I get it, like, oh, I get it. But like if I'm in Bitcoin Magazine, it's kind of like I've already been accepted into one like group that's fairly established in the industry. And then
Yeah.
through my podcast, actually, I had interviewed both Pomp's wife, maybe like a year before getting the job. So I kind of had some relationship with her through the podcast and Twitter. And then I also interviewed who was then the CEO of those companies. So Pomp was more of like a chairman of the board type role. He
Hmm.
wasn't the day-to-day operator. The CEO of
Hmm.
those companies was named Colton. And we had established a relationship also through the podcast about a year in advance. So when that role was something they decided to hire for, I had another person kind of inside the company who knew of me who reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in it. And then Colton was already knew who I was because we'd already kind of established a relationship. And I actually had met
Got
Pomp in person once at a Bitcoin conference as well. So I was like somewhat familiar from like doing a lot of networking in the industry.
Okay, cool. And so that was the Lewis and Kyle show that these guests appeared on because you've
That's
been
right.
doing it for 4 years.
Yep. Colton and Polina were both in the 60s were the episodes, I believe.
Okay,
Like episode
episode
like
60 range.
60 something.
People can
Yeah.
go check that out. And so you were did you start it while you were in college, the podcast,
Yes.
or kind
Yeah. I
of
started
yeah?
when I was a junior in college.
That's an ambitious thing. I'm sure you probably people were like, "What's this guy trying to do here?" Thinks he's like a podcast host all of a sudden.
Dude, I was really good at not caring. Like I just wasn't cool in college and didn't care to be. Or like cool in like a traditional like right, like is my fraternity top house, not top house, like that kind of stuff. I don't know, dude. It's like I did computer science at Alabama. Like you study computer science, you're like already got a lot of engineer stigma. I just did my own stuff. I don't know. Like I kind of had my moment of reckoning earlier on in life of I call it like coming in contact with there's coming in contact with reality and then there's coming to terms with reality. They're two very different things.
Okay.
Sometimes they're the same thing, but coming in contact with reality is like something smacks you in the face and you just are ignorant about it for a long time. And then coming in to terms with reality is like you internalize it and you're like, oh, this is true. And like, there's no way around this. Like, it's like death, right? It's like, you're not cheating death. Like one of those things you're like, this is really how it is. And to be fair, I think, so this was all like 2018, 2019, when a lot of this was happening. I think some of this is actually like I built up irrationally strong views about not wanting to have a traditional job because a traditional job meant
Mm.
in person, right? Meant like to go travel or take a doctor's appointment was like a big deal. And like you had to get permission for that kind of stuff. Like that type of job I was not ready for. But the like remote startup job landscape, I think is actually quite lucrative and has a lot of advantages relative to starting your own thing. So starting your own thing has a lot of advantages too, right? Obviously, I'm voting with my dollars, my actions say which path I'm taking. But all that to say, I had in college kind of realized that the traditional path, if that's what you want to call it, like the don't really think too much about my career, don't obsess over it, just like do well in classes, hopefully do a couple of good internships, maybe have a couple interesting projects, then apply for jobs and see what I can get. I just felt so deeply, I'm like, that is not going to lead to an outcome that I want. And I was like, all these other people around me don't quite understand that. Not all of them. There's plenty of killers that I went to school with who are also doing awesome things. But like in general, the consensus was I'm just gonna, join clubs, get good grades, do cool internships, and like I'm gonna get a great opportunity after graduating. And I basically was
Mhm.
like, the life I want to have is not going to happen through that path. And so I kind of just like screw all the nonsense and all the noise. Like I have to get serious to make an alternative. Otherwise, I'm not going to have an alternative. And so I just was on my mission and didn't particularly care. If, like I didn't like go to parties and was like, I'm the podcast guy. You know what I mean? Like if it came up, it came up.
Mhm. Yeah, so a couple things I could touch upon there, but you mentioned that remote jobs could be a very lucrative way of doing things, or having like a remote company, you know, remote entrepreneurship. Maybe you could kind of walk us through the opportunity set in your eyes, because I'm sure there are a lot of people listening to this that they want to make money online. And that's kind of how we tweet about it and talk about it, as we say, like, look, you can get a remote job, it's faster, less responsibility, or you can start a business. It's kind of more flexible. You don't have a boss. You can kind of invent your own thing. So maybe you could walk us through how you think about these things.
Yeah, I think that when you have a business, you have a boss for sure. You don't have a micromanager, but ultimately, any business, all right, there's obviously exceptions, right? But like if you're a trader, you don't really have a boss, but you have someone is responsible for approving of whether or not your business makes money. In a
Yeah.
traditional scenario, a traditional economic relationship, you have one employer, and it is that person slash organization's decision as to if you are worth continuing to pay. In a business, right, it's like ideally an army of customers. Ideally, the risk is distributed, right? No person can fire you overnight, but you can lose some customers overnight. But someone, you still have to make someone happy because someone is making a decision whether or not to continue to give you money. And so that entity is always your boss to some extent. But the opportunity is, I don't want to say infinite, right? There's a lot to this and trying to distill it to make it smaller. Remote jobs, I think, are a little easier to explain. It's just like any other job, right? It's just you have to be a little bit better at self-managing because you're not going somewhere there's less structure. But I think in terms of if you are capable of doing that, I think for me, just having to be stuck inside a physical destination for 8 hours to 9 hours a day, depending on like how they budget your lunch, is just really not fun because I like to take naps. I like to take phone calls and do dishes and do house. Like I like to keep my house clean, and I don't like to use all my free time doing that. And like all these other basic things. Like I like to take walks during calls. So just like the freedom to just like be more in a state, like a pleasant state of being throughout the day,
Hmm.
and to like not have laundry and all these like chores be the only thing you do with your free time because you're stuck in this destination for the rest of the time. And then also like one really cool thing I've done throughout the past couple of years is I've just like will randomly spend a week with different family. I'll just like go work out of my grandma's house for a week because it's like why not? And like if I only had like 5 vacation days a year, it'd be really hard to like say yeah I'm going to use all 5 of those to like hang out at my grandma's house. But when you're remote, it's just like I'll go there for like 2 weeks this year. I don't even care. Just get great time with family, get work done, maybe get like 85% as productive as usual, and it's totally fine. So that's another really big benefit. But the remote job landscape is pretty straightforward. It's like if you have a skill that companies are hiring for and that skill doesn't demand an in-person presence, then just like go about applying for jobs. And just like anything else, stand out, like use relationships. Don't assume you're entitled to anything just because you applied. But like I don't feel like I need to give especially unique advice for just most skills that exist. If you're really good at the thing, there's someone who
Uh-huh.
needs the thing.
And
And
so you had a good skill. You had computer science, right? You could have been a coder, made your 100, 150K, whatever it is a year working online doing that, but you decided not to and to take a more entrepreneurial path. Hey guys, quick break from the podcast to tell you about job stacking. If you're a remote or hybrid worker looking to maximize your earning potential, then Rolf Haltza, author of Job Stacking, guarantees you'll be able to double your income by implementing his paycheck multiplication layering method. This is the exact system Rolf has used to take his own income and those of many others beyond 20K a month. With this method, Rolf contractually guarantees that you'll be able to double your income in 45 days. So, if you're interested in unleashing your earning potential and doubling your income, then click the link in the description and book a call with Rolf right now.
that's right. Yeah, I think that the that's good income for sure. The coder income. I think that that starts to top out. Like it's hard to make much more than that. Obviously, there's lots of exceptions. Like especially during the crypto cycles, if you have the crypto dev skill sets and again the right projects, you can do some creative things, and you can oftentimes work for more than one company at a time. From if you're a really good developer, so it can stack up. And there's an argument that like maybe I'd be better off financially in the short term and like medium term from that. But at a certain point, there's more to life than just maximizing how much money you make. And I think that I just wanted to like prove to myself that I could use these other skill sets that are at least theoretically more unlimited. I mean, the amount of leverage you can accrue with code is properly unlimited, but the vast majority of that does come down to product. Like you have to, if you're making money not in proportion for like the market rate of the skill, you basically you have to be an entrepreneur to make the most amount of money from coding. Because otherwise,
Mhm.
you're just going to be paid. You're just replaceable. You're just like a high paid engineer, but they'll hire any other high paid engineer. You have to own the upside of the project. And if you want to have a lever of control over how much money that the project makes, you need to think like an owner, not just an engineer. And it's very difficult to expect that to happen for you if the only thing you're bringing to the table is the technical skill set. I just think it's a very rare skill and it's very expensive, like the software engineering skill set. I just think it's more commoditized than actual like the business operator, business growth, business owner. When I say owner, I mean like the ownership mentality as well, skill set of like, okay, great. And you can spend enough money to get anything built, but can you get the distribution, make it popular, make it a thing. I guess it's just more, feels more intrinsically like an adventure to me.
Hmm.
And I also think that, a lot of the times in college and whenever I periodically do technical work on a very personal level, it makes me like less social. Like I kind of like come across like I've just been building Legos all day, and it's like I like a bird from a cave. I like forget to eat. I don't know, like the holistic life picture. I don't like the holistic version of myself when I'm like super into software engineering, because I just become like a antisocial, retreated, like engineer who's just like lost to the world. I like become that
Hmm.
very easily. So I'd rather like be forced to not be that way and also have the other skill set. And it's just always there as an option, like as a career path. I can always just one day be like, you know what? I actually
Back
do just
up.
want to stare at the screen and go do that. Like it hasn't gone away.
So, what do you think would be like the fastest path for someone that wanted to get to just enough money to live, right? 5K, 7K, something like that a month, so that they could just start making money online ASAP and move to Latin America. Sounds like they don't have to be they don't have to become a programmer to do that. Sounds like maybe
Not
some
the
kind of
fastest path.
not the fastest path, right? So it sounds like doing some kind of business thing is faster. You, I would love to know what you think about, if you had to give your advice to like a younger cousin or something, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I want to give a lot of credit. A lot of what I've learned is things, and again, no one came up with any idea, but who really phrase things in such a way that they kind of were seared into my brain is a Twitter account named Cold Email Wizard,
Hmm.
or his real name is Daniel Fazio.
Hmm.
And I just think that there's a couple fundamental truths in the world, right? It's easier for someone with a lot of money to give you money than someone who doesn't have a lot of money. So selling something that the buyer is rather wealthy. And so, like, in my opinion, to make money, you need to provide value. That's like a lot of people think that's ambiguous, but one concrete way of providing value is multiplying someone's money. And another way is saving someone time. It's like think about the if those are your only two options of ways to create or generate value, then you just are paid right in proportion to the amount of value that you've created. So I think different people are prone or predisposed to certain skill sets. But if we're thinking in terms of generally applicable principles, you need to think, okay, who is someone that has a lot of money and what can I do for them to increase that money? And that could come in a lot of forms, right? So, say, for example, someone has a YouTube channel, and basically the path, all the paths I'm outlining are reverse engineered from like freelance B2B skills as like the quickest path to um, making more money. So find some business that is already doing quite well by various metrics, and add to them, like help them do certain things better. So lots of examples for this, right? Let's say you see a YouTube channel that's doing well and probably making money, but you think their thumbnails could be better. Like you could make their thumbnails better. Or you see someone who is, this is like a very, very classic one, someone who is posting a ton of good content on one platform. And when I say someone, it could be an individual or an institution, and say, hey, I noticed that you're posting really good content on this channel, right? Like maybe it's an e-commerce brand and they're totally absent on another channel. So like they're crushing it on YouTube, but they're just not putting anything on Instagram, not putting anything on TikTok. Like, hey, I would like to do that for you. And that would probably create more money for them, right? Because it's like there's customers on there who they're not reaching, etc. So as far as like marketing services, I think the quickest, most straightforward path to making like a livable income with a remote skill is to find some business and find a way to help that business make more money and just offer it to them. There's a lot of details of like how to get your first one, and you can do it for free. I think a reframe for a lot of people, when you're doing something for free at the outset, you think you're being taken advantage of. But I think like a nice little circuit to have playing in your brain is I'm actually getting the better end of the deal by them letting me work on this, because it's like they're spending the time with you while you're bad at the thing and haven't quite figured out how to do it yet and don't have a process and are a little disorganized. Like someone who has a valuable online ecosystem, letting you even play with it, letting you even touch it, is like you're actually getting the better end of the deal while you still don't have skills. But that's a bit into like the logistics of how you would actually make this happen. But high
Hmm.
level, I fundamentally believe like what I would tell a younger cousin or younger version of myself is like find something that's already working, a business that's already clearly making money, clearly doing some things well, and say, hey, I think you could do this particular thing better. I think this is an opportunity to make a bit more money. Can I help you with it?
And what are some of like the glaring areas where you think businesses could be doing things better? I'm guessing copywriting and emails is one, or you wouldn't be in that business. But if you had to give like a gamut of ideas, what would some of those be?
Yeah, I think an interesting thought exercise for this is look at a mature company, right? So look at it. Let's go with an example like a software company or an e-commerce brand. Let's go look at one that has like 200 employees. So like that's a business that's conceivably doing all of the things. They have 200 employees, they have middle managers, they've got like everything firing. So it's like, what are all the roles in that type of company? Most companies that are small aren't doing quite everything. So like an e-commerce brand, you'd be like, okay, they have accountants, they have dedicated people for every social platform, they have like product people, they have lawyers, they have compliance, like they have the full spectrum of corporate functions. Then maybe find a company that's smaller, that's like 10 employees. It's like, oh, it looks like they have literally no blank department. So that could be like one way of analyzing it. And you could do this for anything else, like real estate. Okay, this big real estate firm has like obviously brokers and everything, but they don't have XYZ other functions. So like look at the mature version of the thing, like the fully established enterprise type player, and see like what the more startup model doesn't have. So that's like a way to generate ideas beyond what I come up with off the top of my head. But it's really like a couple of functions. Like how is this business generating attention? How could I generate more attention for them? So like almost every business wants more attention. So that's one thing is like, what are the things that you could offer them to create more attention for their products? So like you mentioned, my business, Inbox Ghosts, we look at businesses that don't have a newsletter and say, why don't you have a newsletter? You should totally have a newsletter. And they're like, well, we don't have one because we're busy or we forgot or it takes a lot of time. And we go, what if I did it for you? And then a certain amount of them say, you know what, let's try it. That's what I do, right? So like that is my main business right now is doing just that. On the technical side, again, I'm kind of like, if you have a technical skill set, you kind of just like need to advertise to the world that you have it and you kind of get projects more quickly just because it's obvious, like people just always need things built, which is cool. But on the marketing side, it's like, how could I bring more attention to this business, or what is an underutilized asset that they already have? And then like offer to utilize it better. That's on the marketing side. And that's where most of my ideas come in from.
Hmm. So with Inbox Ghost, was it hard to get started? Was it hard to get your first client? And how did you kind of pitch the business arrangement?
It was actually quite simple to get my first like 10 clients, which was awesome. I mean, again, this was not my first business. This is like, I kind of created Inbox Ghosts based on the lesson, like all of my biggest pain points from the previous business. So I would, like I said, I was responsible for sales and marketing at Orbit Metrics. And it was hard because our work was a lot more expensive. It was a lot more high trust. The sales cycle was slower. And the need wasn't always framed as an opportunity. It felt more like an infrastructure expense, right? It's like people understand the perceived value of having their data be more organized, but sometimes they're like, that's expensive. Like, I'm fine with it disorganized. Like, we pretty much only were
Yeah.
very, we're kind of only successful converting people who were solution aware, i.e.,
Mhm.
they're like, I know that my data is disorganized. I know that that's now costing me significant money in terms of making poor decisions. What would you charge to fix it? When the conversation's like that, it's a very easy sales conversation. It's like, I will charge this fair amount. Here's examples of me doing it successfully in the past. They're like, great, let's get started. But from a prospecting perspective, I couldn't
Tough
like
sell.
tough sell would be like, hey, is your data disorganized and do you want to spend a fair amount of money fixing it? They're like, I'm good for now. Like, I'll save your info, but like when it's a priority, it's a priority. So Inbox Ghosts, on the other hand, is framed more like an opportunity, right? I do think there's a data and analytics offer that does work well to sell to prospect. Like if we also came in and we're like, we're going to look at your data and we're going to find opportunities to make more money. And if we don't, you don't pay us, right? Like
Hmm.
that's an opportunity that's a bit more like an opportunity creation more than like solving an existing problem. Like I could come in and say, I bet that between all of your analytic services, there's some numbers that are unoptimized. Your landing page isn't converting. Like conversion rate optimization is a huge thing. Like that's a great business. A lot of people do well with that. They're going to like, I'm going to look at every single step that any potential customer takes when going through any piece of your business and find where people are dropping off and improve them and you only pay me if the changes I find and implement are cover the costs of bringing me into the fold. But our offer was pure infrastructure. It was like, no, we're not really going to like look at your data or make decisions for you. We're just going to come in and build the infrastructure such that you can do that. So only people who wanted that wanted that. But with Inbox Ghost, it was a much different opportunity. I just reached out to I was in a couple of communities of business owners, and I announced in there, hey, I'm doing this thing. I just want to get my first few customers under my belt so I can start to have some credibility, so I can say I've done the thing, so I can prove that I'm doing, so I can get some testimonials. So I did offer a very low price to get started. And I knew enough business owners that just were like, sure, that at that price, I'm happy to just like take the risk and support you. And maybe it'll be useful, maybe not, but down to try. And then
Hey guys, quick break from the episode to tell you about BitRefill. BitRefill allows you to shop online and in person without banks, converting your crypto directly into merchant balance. We're talking gift cards to Nike, Amazon, Apple, Airbnb, Hotels.com, and many more, all paid for with crypto. BitRefill offers more than 10,000 gift card options in 180 countries all across Latin America, including Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, El Salvador, and many more. You can also apply the code MyLatinLife at checkout to get 10% back on your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information.
very quickly, just from doing that, and then I made a spreadsheet of like 100 people that I know that are either business owners or business adjacent or know a lot of business owners or just like entrepreneurially minded. And I told them, hey, this is what I'm doing. If you know of anyone who like might benefit from this, I'd love an intro. And just from like reaching out to like 40 of those people, I got a pretty solid initial batch of business. But a lot of that comes from like the goodwill of people know I've been a business operator for a couple of years now, and like I had some reputation and credibility. So I don't think the conversion rate's particularly high, or that conversion rate is something people should expect when they don't have much of a reputation. But if people like you and want to support you, and you've like have a reputation of executing on the things that you said you do,
Yeah.
then it does take less effort progressively.
Right. You just, and what were you charging? I'm just curious, like those first clients, like $500 a month, something like that.
Yeah, we charged our first client 300 a month for a weekly newsletter.
Boom. There you go.
Yeah. But the thing is, we didn't want to spend 6 months trying to charge someone 3 grand a month, and then 6 months from now, be like, you get on a sales call and they're like, "Do you have any examples I can look at?" And I'm like, "Actually, I don't, because I've been spending 6 months trying to get my first customer 3K a month, right?" Versus week 2, I get on sales calls and they're like, "Do you have any examples?" I'm like, "Actually, yeah. Look at this newsletter I sent yesterday. Bam, it's really beautiful." And they're like, "Oh wow, that is beautiful. Okay, it looks like you know what you're talking about." So again, it's like we still were getting the better end of the deal, even though we gave him a hyper discount, because the value for us of just being in the game and doing the things. And they're like,
Yeah.
so do you know how to use this software? I'm like, actually, I do. I was just using it yesterday. Like all of those questions, because I had the experience, I
What
can
do
now
you guys
speak to
use,
it.
by the way?
We're,
ConvertKit?
yeah, it depends what. So some of the newsletters, we actually took over existing newsletters. So someone's like, oh man, I've been running this newsletter every week by myself. It'd be awesome if you could do it for me every other week. So I could just like take a break. So for them, we just use what they were already using. And so sometimes that's ConvertKit. Some people already do have a CRM. So one of our clients was already in a HubSpot CRM. And they're like, great, now you can come up with this newsletter and you can blast it to all the contacts in our CRM. It's like, perfect. And then if someone's coming to us and doesn't have a newsletter whatsoever, we usually recommend MailChimp or Beehive.
And why do you recommend those?
There's easy. I mean, it's kind of like we had to make a decision. Beehive specifically, you can do quite well on their free tier, meaning like you can take the newsletter pretty far before you have to pay. And the user interface, it's very friendly and very easy. And then MailChimp is kind of just like, no one's going to argue with you for picking MailChimp. It's like, yeah, I've heard of MailChimp. I've gotten emails from MailChimp. Seems fine. Like we're not in the business of, it's like non-sexy and boring, in my opinion,
Yeah, yeah.
the
Makes
ESP.
sense. Yeah, I mean, so even if you get people at $700, $1,000 a month, once you have 5, 10 customers, that's looking pretty good and pretty easy to scale. Maybe like get some VA from Colombia or Ukraine or something, and you're off to the races.
Exactly. And then um, there's a lot, easier said than done in terms of like maintaining the quality standard. But assuming that you're like able to manage that person in such a way, because again, like you don't not have a boss doing this business. You just have 10 bosses if you have 10 clients. You need to keep them happy. You need to send good newsletters to keep them happy. But one thing we're not doing yet that we totally could do is, hey, while we're here, writing your newsletter, what if we also, repurpose this for your Instagram and made all these Instagram posts for you based on our stuff? And like, now that we're behind the scenes, it looks like your data is a mess. And we want to, like, what if we cleaned up your data? So a lot of the game is just being positioned for opportunities to come to you and then already being kind of in the door with a lot of businesses, right? Like a lot
Mhm.
of great opportunities come to people who are already inside of a company and they decide they have a need and they look within. So it's kind of the same way on the agency side too. You're just like already working with them. They already trust you as an operator and they're like, hey, we actually need help with this other thing. And like, you're smart and reliable to want to help with that too. So there's a lot of ways things could expand from here.
That's cool. So you see yourself getting into more content creation for other people. I guess you're pretty good at creating content for yourself.
I think for now, right, I think things change frequently for me, but the core focus is really nailing the newsletters.
Definitely.
If someone makes us an offer that we can't refuse, they're like, hey man, write me 2 tweets a month and we'll pay an extra 10K. I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to find the time to write those 2 tweets. But if it's on a similar bar, I'd rather like crush the operational know-how, at least for the next 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. I wonder if we've just spawned a bunch of new email list copywriter people just from listening to this episode because it does sound pretty straightforward.
It's straightforward. I mean, it takes work to like write the emails and to wake up and do it on time. Um, I just
When's
make
the
it seem
best time
easy
to
because
send
it's
email?
familiar to me.
Sorry to interrupt.
I
When's the
haven't totally
best time
studied
to
that
send email?
actually.
People,
I
I
haven't.
hear Monday or I hear the mornings are better. I
We
heard
send in the
people are
mornings.
you
Yeah,
send in the
we send in
mornings.
the mornings.
I heard something like people are less likely to unsubscribe in the morning, and in the evenings maybe they just had a long day, and so they're just more prone to unsubscribe. Is that a thing?
I haven't gotten into that. I haven't really made a study of it quite yet.
Fair enough. Okay, something to put on the list. Well, I wouldn't mind with the time we have selfishly asking you about podcasting
Let's do
because
it.
you told me offline that you've interviewed some 30 other podcast hosts. You're a host yourself. You interviewed other hosts to kind of glean their tips, growth strategies, things like that. Who have you spoken to, by the way?
Yeah, for that project, we interviewed Jordan Harbinger, who's got a
Hmm.
very popular podcast. We
Yeah, the
interviewed
dating
Chris Williams.
one.
It's
What's it
actually not a
called?
dating podcast anymore.
Charisma on command, something like that.
That's not Jordan Harbinger. That Charisma on Command. I don't know if that's what there was. He was at one point involved with a dating podcast. He's no longer involved with that.
It's
Now he does
called
the
the
Jordan
Jordan
Harbinger
Harbinger
show.
Show. Okay, yeah,
Yes,
cool.
but
Yeah.
he did used to have dating podcasts back in the day.
Okay, yep.
And then Chris Williamson from Modern Wisdom.
It's the
If
bald
you've heard of
guy
him,
with like
he's got facial
the
hair and very short
yeah,
hair. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah.
and David Perel. We interviewed him. Kinsey Grant. She's not. I don't know. If she's podcasting anymore. She did the Morning Brew podcast. This was in 2020. So this was a ways ago.
That
We
you
had
did
Danny
the
Miranda.
30 interviews.
Yes,
You did that in 2020.
I did that in 2020.
Okay. Danny Miranda?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
He'd only done about like 50 episodes at the time, so his show's brand new. Some crypto pod. I could find the full list. There's a podcast called the Group Chat Pod. They're fairly popular in like the ecom niche. Those are a few that stand out that come to mind. Female Startup Club. They're very popular in Australia. I'm like looking up the summit. I'm seeing if there are anyone else that I missed critically.
All good. Well, I would love to get to just kind of gleaning the advice that you have gotten. I'll tell you off the bat just to kick things off. I was listening to a podcast recently, just in the past week or two, um, regarding how to grow a podcast. And they said
Mm-hmm.
the best way to grow a podcast is actually to guest appear on other people's podcasts because people who listen to podcasts would naturally then just, subscribe to your podcast. And I was like, damn, I didn't really think of that. I've done,
Yeah.
150 episodes and I've only done like 3 guest appearances or something. So that's kind of like one of my game plans for 2024 is to guest on more on other people's shows.
Yeah, that's very consistently solid advice that I hear a lot of. I think there's nothing unexpected, right? There's no unexpected advice for this. I don't know if I heard anything that was like, wow, I wouldn't have thought of that. And I think, and that's not an insult. It's kind of just like to anyone, just it's just like do a good job. And I don't know. It's like I almost feel like I'm sounding like black pilled right now. I'm just like nihilistic. I'm just like, there's a certain point when like you've read enough business content and like, I want to say this in like the least arrogant way, but when you have some grasp of the fundamentals, then it's just like nothing surprising. It's just like do the hard thing continuously a lot. And everything in business breaks down to like, well, how does your thing succeed? And it's lots of people know about it and a high percentage of them convert into customers for the thing. So for your podcast, it's like, how do you make lots of people aware of your podcast? How do you make those people who are aware of it likely to listen to it? And how do you make those people likely to retain? And that like there's not really another top level variable to derive things from. You could say, how do I get my current listeners to refer people? But that's really just a component of how do I make people find out about this thing. That's just a strategy for more people to become aware, right? But everything is derivative of those 2 to 3 initial top level ideas. And so in terms of going on a lot of podcasts, that's accomplishing 2 of those, right? It's both making people aware of the podcast just by you being like someone, the people who are listening to this who didn't know who I was before listening to this, they are now aware of my existence. So that's step one.
Yep.
And then, like you had said, that strategy will likely have a higher conversion rate than a lot of other strategies for the reason being that those people listen to podcasts. So it's like if you went to an elementary school for the day or like a kindergarten classroom, right? And you just like talk to the kindergartners all day, like, and we're just like, I have a podcast. They'd be like, great. You made a lot of people aware of the fact that you have a podcast, but it's very unlikely that any podcast listeners are going to convert from you going to that kindergarten on that day. And so, again, another very common strategy, another channel, right, is just trying to grow in the charts for a podcast. Because
Mm-hmm.
who are the people looking at podcast charts? Someone who's like very keen on listening to a podcast. So then the question is, how do you grow in the podcast charts? And that's a question of, okay, it's an algorithm that's somewhat a black box. It's not fully transparent how you get boosted inside the podcast charts, but obviously it's some factor of how many downloads does your show get? How many followers does your show have? How many reviews do you get? And how often do you get reviews? So let's say it's all based on reviews. Then it's like, okay, how do I get a lot of reviews for my podcast? I could just like pay people, right? If I could just like put a Twitter post out that's like, I'll give $100 to anyone who leaves a review for my show, you'd probably get a lot of reviews that day. You'd spend a lot of money, but you'd probably get a lot of reviews. It's really just breaking it. Like, I don't know how much more I need to walk through the exercise, but that's what it is, right? And obviously, if you put out more episodes more frequently, you're going to get more listens, and then that's quite good. For me, what I did was I posted on YouTube. So like how I went from 700 subscribers on YouTube to 13,000 subscribers on YouTube in about like a 9-month period was I posted a lot of YouTube shorts because there was a point in time when the traffic was very easy to get. You posted a YouTube short, YouTube was showing those videos for you. So I was getting a lot
Mm-hmm.
of views, more than I deserved, candidly, more than I deserved on just basic shorts on YouTube of like clips from my podcast or just clips of like other entrepreneurs. Just someone
Mm-hmm.
like Barbara Corcoran. I posted a clip of Barbara Corcoran that got 5.4 million views and probably drove like
Nice.
5,000 subscribers to my show. Just because
Nice.
it's like, so what did I do? I like made lots of people aware of my podcast because they saw the logo in the top or bottom corner of the video. And then a percentage of them click through and chose to subscribe. So in terms of like, what stands out to me from that from that summit where I interviewed all those hosts, it was basically disappointing, right? It's like, wow, none of these people had any hacks. They all it's just marketing. And the fundamentals of marketing are like make people aware of your thing and make an offer such that the people who are aware of it choose to engage with it. And it was just like, well, I guess there's no getting lucky here. I just need to make a damn good podcast and market the hell out of it.
And how do you market the podcast? This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Job Stacking. Introducing Rolf Haltza's paycheck multiplication layering method, a revolutionary approach that redefines the traditional career path. This is Rolf's new Done With You program, where he'll work with you to implement job stacking for yourself. With this method, Rolf contractually guarantees that you'll be able to double your income in 45 days. So, are you ready to step out of the shadows of job insecurity and step into a world of career abundance? Then just click the link in the description of this episode, book a call with Rolf, and start walking the path of unleashing your earning potential with job stacking.
So I had mentioned this earlier that my top priority with the podcast is very genuinely intrinsic. So the only reason I really wanted to grow it last year was because I was coming up on the 3-year anniversary for the show. And I didn't like that I'd been doing it for 3 years and didn't have 1,000 subscribers on YouTube yet. That just didn't sit well with me. So I kind of was like, how do I growth hack to 1,000 subs? And that's when I did all the YouTube short stuff. But now I pretty much, I have an email list that whenever I publish an episode, that email list gets a notification about the show. I put it on YouTube and we get a good amount of organic traffic because our channel's been around a long time and we have a reasonable level of, I guess I would call it YouTube domain authority. So if I post an episode with someone who, let's say, doesn't get, who's not, so Noah Kagan, right? I'm probably not going to rank number one on YouTube for Noah Kagan because there's a lot of other YouTube videos that he's been in. But let's say someone who goes on like one podcast that whole year and they get Googled like 100 times a year because like that's their rough level of celebrity. I'm probably going to get all of those views. So most of my traffic just comes from like putting a lot of videos on YouTube and getting YouTube organic search traffic. And then I just on Twitter, have fun on Twitter and talk about whatever I'm doing. And I announce it on Twitter and I announce it on LinkedIn. That's pretty much all I do to promote the podcast directly.
Okay.
But I'm
Twitter,
not super motivated to
LinkedIn,
grow it.
email list,
Mm-hmm.
some shorts.
Mm-hmm.
But you did the shorts that you did though. Were they from? Was Barbara on your podcast, or you just took it from somewhere on the internet?
Just took it from somewhere on the internet.
Okay, yeah, because I'm seeing like Hormozy, Buffett,
Yep.
Kevin O'Leary. You just kind of like took some stuff from the internet, where they said some motivational stuff.
Correct.
Okay, okay, got it. I noticed other than the episode prior to Noah Kagan was the reply guy,
Michael
Michael
Girdley,
Girdley. He's the reply guy, right?
like he just clowns people on Twitter.
That's like how he like became a guy. Was he just like was just like mass replying? I think, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know. I don't know how he got big, actually. I didn't ask his come up strategy on Twitter. He is big on Twitter now, that's for sure.
He's got 200K on Twitter, and he was just in the replies for everyone. Like, I wonder if he still does it, but yeah, I'm
He's
pretty
in the
sure that's
trenches.
what
When
he
I go
did.
on Twitter, I see a lot of his face.
He's like first reply. Yeah, I'm even looking at it now, and there's like a lot of replies in the past hour, where like anyone who's anyone, he just replies.
Mm-hmm. And
Okay.
sometimes he replies hit.
Yeah. I
That's
mean,
totally like if I was really motivated to grow on Twitter, I would probably have a very basic quota system of like 1 to 2 threads a week, 5 to 10 tweets a day, and like 20 replies a day. I would just
dude,
hammer that.
yeah, I'm looking at this now. This guy is the reply guy, bro. Like, he's just like commenting on people's stuff like I love you in your newsletter. You know what I mean? He's just like almost like generic replies and stuff. A bit of both, like a bit of like, like a fire emoji and then other ones that are like slightly insightful. But yeah, he was just like he would just always be there underneath like like strip mall guy,
Mm-hmm.
strip mall guy and some of these other like business Twitter guys, he'd be like first
Yeah, we
response.
had Nick Huber on last year as well, and he's also pretty funny on Twitter.
Yeah.
Sweaty
Are you
startups.
are you pretty addicted to Twitter?
Yes,
Has it been good?
I
Has it
have.
been worth it? Like good connections and stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately, it has been worth it. I
Unfortunately,
said, unfortunately, it has been worth it. If it was an easy decision to unfortunately enough, it's like drinking, right? Like drinking's awful. Like you feel terrible. and it's bad for your health, and you do stupid things, and you spend a lot more money than you would otherwise. But sometimes you just have a lot of fun, and you're like, damn, like this is actually, kind of justified from time to time. So unfortunately, on Twitter, I've had enough really good life things happen that I'm like, I'm still gonna do the thing that's poison because it still has some strong benefits. Like during Google Analytics 4 migration last July, I got a lot of deals from that. Some of those have turned into retainers that are now helping me be employed, which is awesome. A lot of customers have come from Twitter. A lot of podcast guests that eventually became customers came from Twitter. A lot of people I've met in person and like friends I have in different cities. Like a lot of the people I'm hanging out with in New York are people I wouldn't know for not like had it not been for Twitter. I've only been in New York for like 2 weeks, and like I have a very full social calendar just because it's like made a lot of friends from Twitter. So
Hmm.
unfortunately, there's like a lot of benefits, and it justifies like the lack of peace of mind that it gives you. But it's a lifelong game, and maybe one day I'll conquer it. I meditated for 3 minutes today, and I probably use Twitter less today as a result.
Yeah, no, same for me. I mean, I definitely, I think I'd say more than 90% of our podcast guests are like straight from Twitter.
That's about right. That's about where I'm at. Maybe upper 80s.
Yeah, I mean, there was like a few where I watched their YouTube and then like sent them an email to the like about email address on their
Mm-hmm.
YouTube channel, and maybe definitely a handful of like direct introductions, but yeah, definitely like 80% plus from Twitter and just like who's in the conversation, you know.
It's it's true. Yeah, it's worked out quite well. Twitter.
And New York's good. Are you feeling it? You're going to be based there. It's New York's not dead.
New York's definitely not dead. That's for sure. Am I going to be based out here for a long time? That is remains to be seen. But I'm liking it. I'm having a lot of fun. I just like to move around. It's like I almost feel obligated to because I can. It's like I put a lot
You're
of time into like what's that?
you're from the South though,
I'm from the West Coast. I'm from Las Vegas
so you're from Vegas, but you went to school in Alabama
in
or
Alabama.
in Alabama. Okay,
That's right. And then I lived in Arizona most of the last 2 years in Scottsdale.
there's a huge community of like ecom guys in Scottsdale, right? Was that the reason?
No, my business partner from Orbit Metrics, who's also like my best friend, he wanted to move out there, and I didn't have anywhere else to be. So I was like, sure, let's move here, move in together, and absolutely lock in until we get this business to like a sustainable point. And so that's what we did from like September of 2022, right? Like I joined the business, it was making just barely enough to pay me full time to pay rent. And then the goal was like, okay, let's pay me more than enough to pay rent and bring you on full time and grow and all these other things. And, to some extent, we've accomplished that, I'd say. Like he quit his job. He's been paid full time from the business. We have a third business partner now, and it's been good. But yeah, we just like locked in at a nice apartment and didn't emerge for a couple months until what needed to be done was done.
That's sick. It sounds like
And it
you
was
have
cool
a
to meet a
lot
lot
of
of econ people
yeah.
down
Sounds like
there.
you have a lot of motivation and ambition.
I think that's accurate. I don't know. I came like I said, it's like I'm gonna die, bro. I got limited time here, and I know what the alternative is, and I don't want it.
What's the alternative?
Just not being able to like do my own thing, like not being in control of what I'm doing and where I'm making money and how much money I can make. It's just a certain wiring where it's like difficult. I say this on a lot of podcasts. It's like it's difficult to sleep. Like it's kind of like the feeling of like again, I don't want to get too I don't even know what I would call this, but depression. I don't know. I can't really say I've like struggled with like proper depression in a clinical sense. I've been sad before, but for my opinion, for the vast majority of people, like depression is just a signal from your body that you're not like pursuing your potential,
Hmm.
and so you're sad because you're like, I'm a loser, and or like your subconscious is trying to tell you that, but it's kind of a very messy communication channel. And so for me, it's kind of just like I don't think I'd be capable of being happy unless I feel like I'm actively trying to pursue my potential. And that for some reason, some part of me sees my potential as a very successful entrepreneur. So like, unless I'm on that path, I'm going to be like, man, you're really not going for it. And that's when you like are kind of humdrum. I don't want to be humdrum.
Yeah, makes sense. I feel like if we checked in like 2 years from now, you'd have you'll like really find your footing. Like I feel like this email thing is like a sick cash flow thing to kind of like make some connections, get the cash flow going. But I feel like I don't know, at some point you'll like seriously hit your stride in like a big way and you'll be well on your way to decamillionaire status and all that.
Would be cool. I'll find it. Right. It's like, I like what we're doing now. And again, I'm like hyper focused on getting great results from our clients and delivering really good newsletters. But I think in general, right, if you're focused on pursuing that decamillionaire thing, like your life kind of sucks along the way because it's like, wow, I'm making
Yeah.
$0, I'm making $0, I'm making $0. Hopefully this thing will work out for me one day. Whereas the
Hmm.
path I'm on is like, I'm incrementally getting better, incrementally making more money, incrementally like building my conviction and my ability to do things and build a business and growing my network. So it's very much like the podcast, right? The podcast was like, I don't think I'm just going to be successful not knowing anything, not having any connections, picking a business model from thin air and making it happen. It's like, that's probably not going to work out for me. So let me just like interview a lot of people, build a network, build some knowledge so that when I am ready to go out and be an entrepreneur, I'm more likely to succeed. And so now where I'm on the path is like, let me do something high probability of success, right? Like proven business model, doing things that have been done before, simply just like finding clients, getting great results for them, keeping them happy, just executing a very proven thing to build cash flow, build a reputation, both like internally, meaning like self confidence, and externally, like to the world. Look, I've done this thing before. I've built a business that has employees and scaled and did these great things. Um, so that when I go for the bigger ambitious thing, it's like I've got capital to do it. I know I can operate. I have a team. It's like I've built all the skills. So
Hmm.
it's definitely a path.
How are you going about scaling beyond the three co-founders and scaling the email thing? And I guess both businesses, like, are you getting people from Upwork, or what are you doing to kind of like get you, working on the business, not in the business?
Yeah, a lot of that is what we're in right now. So I don't want to speak to expertise I don't have. A lot of that's like that is the thing I'm currently learning and working through.
And what have you kind of learned so far? This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Bit Refill. Bit Refill is the best way to spend your crypto in Latin America. Purchase gift cards or mobile refills from more than 3,500 brands in 186 countries instantly, safely, and privately. Visit bitrefill.com for more information.
Don't expect low cost labor to be good at multiple things. So like give people one job. And people are good at the thing that their profile is built around, but probably not much else. But as a default rule. So it's just like don't hire generalists when you're hiring freelancers. Like, sure, it's great to be pleasantly surprised, but don't set expectations. So it's like very narrowly scoped projects, like so much so, like just, I mean, set people up for success, right? It's not saying like good talent doesn't exist, but it's just like if you're not paying top dollar, you're not going to get top dollar results. But sometimes, if you actually do find a really narrowly scoped task, and it is exactly what this person has done 50 times in the past, then you should expect them to succeed with it. But don't expect them to do anything else necessarily.
Mm.
It's this is for subcontracting, not for hiring employees. For subcontracting, it's just like be as specific as possible and find someone with as specific of experience as possible. It's like hire the specialist. For subcontracting, that's not like meant to be generalized as hiring advice or business advice or leadership advice. That is
Hmm.
like the pragmatic lane that I have explored, what I've learned about exploring that like pragmatic lane of subcontracting.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And you had alluded to that you're, part of a bunch of business communities. What does that look like being part of these business networks? Is it like group chats on WhatsApp, or what kind of form does that take?
No, I was like looking at my calendar here, just seeing what time it was, and the person who I had after this rescheduled. So I'm like, how about that? Very nice. I'll take it. Um, I was a part of. It's called Client Ascension, It's
Okay, yeah, that's Dan Fazio's thing.
yep.
Okay.
So I paid the annual membership to join it, and it was kick ass, dude. Nothing but amazing things to say about it. In some respects, I think it's kind of funny to say this, but I almost feel like I'm not almost. I feel a stronger sense of like affinity to the people in there than like I do like my collegiate affiliations. But it's because it was my people, right? It's like minded. It was a like minded group. Whereas I didn't feel like I related to that many people at college. Whereas in this group, I felt like I related almost to every single person in there, just like minded. And they still have it, they still run it, it's great. I got out of it what I set to get out of it, so that I didn't renew. But that's just because it was so great year one, I didn't need to stay in. I They have a group chat on Slack with like hundreds of people in it, super active, so active. It's crazy fast response time. They have like 20 coaches who are specialists in various things, like so many specialists who are really good at helping you answer your questions about cold email and how to grow on Twitter and how to do ops and how to do hiring and how to do automation and how to do like your financial stuff, like tons of great resources. And then they had video curriculum, and then they had 20 live coaching calls per week with different coaches where you can show up and do Q&A about like whatever is bothering you and meet the other people in the community. So I got a ton of referrals. I got like to be called an idiot when I was being stupid, which is so valuable for someone to like tell you you're being dumb when you're being dumb. So you stop being dumb. It was great, dude.
Hmm. Sounds like you're
Like,
probably one of the more active participants.
dude, I wasn't. I mean, it's a spectrum, right? I compare myself to the people who are like most active, obviously, and they were like hyperactive. I went to like 30 calls over the course of the year, maybe total. Like I barely participated and I got so much out of it.
Hmm. And what did you get out of it?
A lot of it was just like, I mean, pragmatically, a lot of referrals. A lot of people were like, I developed a reputation for being the guy for the things we were good at, technically speaking. So Google Analytics 4, building the custom reporting dashboards, other like ad attribution challenges and like solving those and helping people fix those issues. And that's a big thing because everyone in there has a marketing agency. So we got a lot of referrals for that type of work.
And that was for the Orbit Metrics business?
Mhm.
Okay.
And then also, I mean, I learned a lot of very subtle things from just like being on calls and hearing what people are doing. And then a lot of it's just like, humans are very mimetic, right? We like take a lot of inspiration from what people around us are doing and set our own bar versus set our own bar on what the bar of those around us is. And I basically just saw a lot of people younger than me making more money. And I was like, what the hell am I doing wrong? Like it kind of made me feel like a piece of shit. And I was like, I don't feel like a piece of shit. What are these guys doing? They're not smarter than me. They're not older than me. They're just like being less of an idiot than I'm being. So it was just like good to get pissed off and like see other young people like, oh, okay, this is possible.
Because you're
If they
only
can do it,
what,
I can
like
do
you're
it.
like 25 now?
Yeah, in 24.
24? People are
Mhm.
younger than you making 100K a month type stuff.
Oh, yeah.
How's that work? Like what have people been doing?
Same stuff, right? Cold email agencies. So it's like a lot of people in there do cold email as a service. It's like, hey, we'll help get you clients every meet. We'll set up cold email, charge you $300 per meeting, and 10% of any business that we close. Cool. That's solid business. Video marketing, right? Hey, you should have a YouTube channel. We'll script your videos, edit and produce them. That offer did quite well. Same thing with like TikTok. Then also just lots of traditional like SEO agencies, paid ad agencies, email marketing agencies.
Just any kind of agency to help
Not like a ton
businesses
of
do
guys in
stuff.
there doing 100K a month, to be honest. But most of the guys in there are doing at least 10K a month. And then they like ramp up to like 30, 40, 50.
Hmm. And it's just all different types of agencies, basically.
Yep. Almost everyone in there is a B2B service provider. B2B, business to business. Yeah. Sometimes I say that very quickly.
B2B.
Yeah. And people are like,
Because
what the hell are you saying?
I feel like a lot of people don't realize that they shouldn't, like, people might not know to hyper focus on a B2B agency, or they might think that if you're on Twitter, you might think agencies are pretty saturated, but I mean, I guess everyone always needs, you know, their business is running better and better and more efficient and stuff.
I the market saturation thing. It depends, right? It's Twitter definitely does give you like a distorted view of reality, 100%. Like there was a time when I thought like a lot of people have podcasts, but like I think everyone has a podcast because everyone I talk to has a podcast.
Hmm.
But then it's not like I go out in New York and like everyone I meet has a podcast. It just kind of depends how much time you spend online. But I don't properly know like the statistics. I'll say one thing about saturation that might be interesting for people is that the reason some markets and some segments are never saturated is because the second someone starts doing well, they progress to bigger and better things. So, for example, in September, I was excited to offer a weekly newsletter for $300 per month. I am no longer excited to offer a newsletter for $300 a month 5 months later, right? Because I've progressed to bigger and better deals by the nature of not being a complete beginner. So that market share will always exist for someone to like go out and offer the $300 newsletter. Or like there's almost always room for people to get started in things at the lower price tier because everyone who's doing the thing successfully has already graduated past the point to which those opportunities will be interesting for them. Same
Yeah.
thing with like software development projects with a budget of like 2K to 10K, right? At a certain point, you've done like six of those. You're no longer interested in the $10,000 projects because you've probably found bigger projects. So there's like small budget software projects will always have like some demand for. It's the same thing with like flipping houses. Like there's always a shitty house you could flip in your community because people flip one or two houses and they're like, well, if I can make 50K flipping a $100,000 house, I could make 300K flipping a $500,000 house. And it's really just the same thing. It's just a little bit bigger. So that person does two small deals, then they're never interested in flipping a house that's under 500K ever again. And so that market space always exists because it's just the opportunities are the small opportunities. There's no efficient way to like get them in bulk because someone's like, I would rather just do the thing with a bigger payoff.
It's actually pretty profound. I've never heard that explained in that way. I like that.
That's how I think about it, at least.
Yeah. Cool. So Lewis is graduating to bigger and better things a little bit.
A little bit every day. Well, that's the goal, right? It's like the opportunities that you would have killed for X months ago, you'd say no to. That's like a sign of progress.
Are you going to keep up with the podcast?
I plan to.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a ton of time. I have an editor who does a lot of the work for me post production,
Hmm.
and finding guests is not very difficult. And I'm still curious about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I still have a desire to talk to people about them. And also, like, you can appreciate this too. How many of the people that you talk to would be like, it's been a year. I'd love to talk to that guy again, see what he's up to. Right? Like, there's very few people I've had on the show that I'm like, it wouldn't be awesome to interview them again. Like, most of them, I'm like, I could just run the roster from start at the beginning and catch back up and do another 300 episodes or another 100 episodes, just
Yeah. Yeah.
catching up with people I haven't talked to in 2 years and seeing what's new with them
Yeah. It's
and what
true.
they've learned.
It's definitely really good networking for sure. What do you have a set frequency?
I do once a week, roughly.
Roughly once
I'm
a
not
week, but you don't
perfect.
do like it's not like scheduled.
Usually Tuesdays, but
Usually Tuesdays. Okay.
yeah, it's not my top priority to get them out on time. It's not. Um, Again, it's like I'd rather still do it. Like I missed it a couple times. Stopping's the worst outcome for me. I just want to keep it going. And it's like if I'm 500 weeks in and I've only published 450 episodes, no, it's going to be
Hmm.
like, oh man, you loser. You only published an episode once a week 90% of the time. Be like, damn, you've like been podcasting fairly consistently for 10 years. Be like, yeah, I have.
Hmm. I
Because
noticed this is kind
I
of
set a
random,
very
but
flexible framework.
yeah. Sorry, this is a random question, but I noticed that you were using this sort of light blue thumbnail template up until recently, and you started getting away from that to kind of like different thumbnails for every episode. Was that a
Mhm.
conscious thing?
I mean, I think the light blue thumbnails are pretty tame. Uh, I started using Dolly 3 to make like cool AI generated art.
Hmm.
Um, and so I've been using that. Yeah, I'm still testing, always testing, seeing what's working. The blue thumbnail I use is like when I can't come up with the design idea, so I'll just like put the dude's name up there, and what they do on a blue template and hope for the best. But sometimes I'm like, you know what? I could make a pretty cool AI generated art here. So let's see what happens.
Hmm. Yeah, that'll probably be. I should probably look into that. It'll be dope for Latin America. It'll be like
Oh, yeah.
psychedelic toucans like flying off the
Sure.
thumbnail.
Yeah. That'd be badass.
Okay. Yeah, we're looking into this right now. Okay, sick man. Don't want to take too much of your time. I know time's money out there in New York City, so we'll uh
I gotta go to
we'll
the
get to
bodega and get some grilled chicken.
we'll get to wrapping up. Really cool to connect though, and I'm really happy we made this connection because I can tell you really have a bright future ahead of you, and I feel like probably a lot of these client ascension alumni, like I feel like it's going to be like the PayPal mafia or something.
Yeah, I don't know how many of them are like gonna go out to do like big $1 billion Silicon Valley tech. Like I think most of them are just gonna like make a bag and just kind of like have a nice and just like chill out. And like a lot of these dudes are like high key very mindful as well. Like I think that like they're all kind of chasing that like not a lot of them are chasing like the what lifestyle would I call it? Um they're chasing the lifestyle of just I don't just like a traditional lifestyle. Just like a lot of them are like family oriented, just like have a family, make a good income, have a good work life balance. Not like they're not like schizo Elon types.
Right. Just like live in Tampa, maybe have a
Like
little
live in
boat.
Tampa, get a boat, make good money, send your kids to good schools, have a nice like hot Pilates wife, but like not like you know work nonstop and try to create the next XYZ. A lot of them are ambitious, but I think a lot of them will be more like that low key millionaire next door, like own a couple multifamily apartment complexes and like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
nondescript Midwest America, make a solid good passive income, but in like more of those like low key type guys, not like big tech people. Most of them aren't tech people.
Mm-hmm.
Vast majority of them aren't tech people.
Mm-hmm.
They're more the type that'll like low key just like own 40% of the real estate in like some random small town. Like
I'm
I'm saying they'll
down.
all be very successful, but not in like the Silicon Valley way.
Right. Do you feel like you're more on that side of things, like more like a Silicon Valley, go for a Billy?
I don't have a very clear vision of like what it'll look like professionally. I'd like to, once I'm pretty significantly out earning the software engineer arc, like I do think I want to switch to more like impact focused work rather than like making the most money possible.
That's
Like
what they
there's no,
all say.
what's that?
That's what they all say. All right, man. Well, we'll get to wrapping up. Um, I'm definitely, by the way, down. You got to invite me on your podcast as well sometime.
Let's
We can
do it.
talk about the benefits of life in Latin America, geo arbitrage, digital nomad life, all that good
Yeah, I'm
stuff.
about to spend $17 a pound on grilled chicken. So
Yeah.
food
I got
prices, not New York strength.
yeah, I got a full time maid out here, 3 meals a day. Wake up in the morning, my coffee's made. It's a good life.
Damn. Where are you right now?
I'm in Mexico.
Oh, nice. Very cool, man. Yeah, I'm gonna have no shortage of questions for you. So when we chat
Let's
on
do
my
it
show.
sometime. So people can, in the meantime, subscribe to the Lewis and Kyle show on YouTube. And
Yep, that's Louis, not Lewis. And then in Shulman, there's no C. So
yes, where you can learn from world class entrepreneurs, investors, and authors. You can also find Lewis on Twitter at Lewis Schulman. All the links will be in the show notes as well. Any kind of final call to action or anywhere you want to direct the audience's attention?
yeah, man, I think just do stuff. Like do stuff. Like take action, launch a thing, try things. Like put things out into the world, buy a plane ticket to South America. Just like don't delay things. There's no reason. It's like you can only see maybe 3 steps ahead, but not more than 3 steps ahead. So it's like, oh man, I might like it in Latin America, or like, oh man, it might be cool to like launch a podcast. Just like, how could you literally do that like this weekend? Like, where could you
Yeah.
buy a flight like ASAP and just go? You don't have to have the remote income to go to Latin America for a week, right? Just like get there. Or you don't have to like have a grand vision for a big online business before like sending a cold DM to try to get a customer. Just like see if you can find someone to pay you $10 to do something. Like, can you literally
Mm-hmm.
get someone to like reply to can you just do something for free? Just like start like do a project for a person or book a flight to a place. Just
Mm-hmm.
like literally do a thing to like get started. And you don't need to have a full podcast. You don't need a logo. But like, is there someone interesting who would hop on Zoom with you for 20 minutes unless you record it? You need to have to publish it. Just like start taking some steps to like whatever idea that you're like, man, if only, like I kind of want to work up the courage to like do this thing that Lewis is doing or go to Latin America, like all these other guests do. It's just like, dude, just like get in the car or I don't know, just like
Yeah.
do
Just
something to move
incremental
in
every
that
day.
direction.
Yeah.
Exactly. Even if it's sending a DM or like hopping on the phone with someone who lives in Mexico or taking like a 1 hour lesson on italki for like $9. So like take like a step.
I like it. I like action. I like speed. So that's all good advice. Again, our guest today, Lewis Shulman, inboxghost.com, orbitmetrics.io, the Lewis and Kyle Show podcast and YouTube channel. Thanks again to Lewis for doing this, and thank you to the audience for listening.
Thanks so much, man.